Hello my friends, in this video I would like to show you my favorite flat profile setting for shooting video with Panasonic G85, G80, G81 or G7 and other Panasonic cameras. Last week I made color grading tutorial for Sony A6500 when I talked about custom flat picture profile that I use on my Sony A6500, which is picture profile 8 with gamma change to Cine4, and I really wanted something similar for Panasonic G85, so I wanted profile that is flat, that gives me a lot of flexibility in post, that captures a lot of dynamic range, but not completely flat like Cine D or log profiles on GH4 and GH5, and here's what I came up with. So to set up this profile you need to go to camera menu, motion picture tab, photo style, and we will be starting with natural picture style. The reason why we will not use Cine D is that you can only use that in manual video mode, and Panasonic has decided that they won't allow us to use auto ISO in manual video, which I sometimes like to do, so we will start with natural. We will set contrast to -5 to get that flat picture with high dynamic range. We will set the in-camera sharpening to -5 as well. That doesn't mean that you won't get sharp picture, just that you will control sharpness in post. Noise reduction I go with -1 because the camera is doing decent job here, so it will save you some exporting time. And finally we will set saturation to -5. Now the picture profile is ready. You can also save this as your custom profile by that disp save button, but we need to do one more thing, which is to set shadows and highlights. This is very important setting because unlike iDynamic, highlight shadow setting has real effect on dynamic range that the camera can capture. It is in motion picture tab and it is item 3 on page 6 in Panasonic G85. My advice here is to set it to shadows +1 and highlights -1. You can try +2 and -2, but in my experience beyond 2 it introduces a lot of noise into your footage. So for me +1 and -1 works the best. And now let's take a look at how this custom hybrid flat picture profile looks and performs. I will be comparing it to my favorite flat profile on Sony A6500, which is picture profile 8 with gamma set to Cine4, because this G85 custom profile is inspired by that picture profile. So the first scene is our well-known testing landscape. As you can see, footage shot with custom flat profile on G85 looks very similar to custom flat profile on Sony A6500, which is remarkable. This picture profile captures a lot of dynamic range. There is maybe just a little bit more contrast in Sony footage and a little bit more saturation in Panasonic footage, but these are really closely matched and I consider that a success. Next we will take a look at what color grading options and how much flexibility in post does this picture profile provide. So following my usual procedure in Lumetri color, I will first add some saturation to about 145, then I will move the curve step. First I will adjust shadows by moving lower part of the curve. Somewhere around here I'm happy with the look of the shadows. I will boost those highlights in the sky just a bit. Now I have to decrease that saturation. I will make the colors a bit warmer, maybe push the tint a bit towards green and finalize it by adjusting the HSL wheel to make that sky a bit more pronounced, to make it look more realistic. And as a final step I will use a bit of sharpening. About 35 looks good, and overall I'm happy with this look. So to see how similar it is to our benchmark, which is the picture profile in Sony, I will take those settings and apply those on Sony footage, and we can see that it looks pretty similar. The Sony footage is now over sharpened because it doesn't need so much sharpening, so I will adjust that. Also the blacks are darker in Sony footage, that could actually be adjusted as well, but overall I'm very happy about this result, and the performance of this picture profile in this scene is really good, considering that it is not a log profile. I like the flexibility of this picture profile and I like how much detail it captures in highlights and shadows in this scene. Next we will take a look at the skin tones, and here I'm happy to say that just like with custom Sony picture profile, this profile works really good with skin tones. Even when I set the exposure for black lens, in this profile it will capture enough dynamic range so that all of the lighter skin tones are preserved and can be graded to my taste, which is really important, especially for professional videographers. Here I have more challenging scene. Here the light is coming from the window and shining on my hand, and it is also shot at about ISO 1250, but even here this picture profile captures enough information in highlights, even though that the scene is exposed for the dark lens and there are no large overexposed white spots on my hand. So here I'm also happy about the performance of this profile. One more thing that we need to take a look at is how does it perform at higher ISO values and how does it manage noise after color grading. Here we have a really difficult scene where most of the frame is in shadow and then there are highlights in windows. So this scene always shows how much dynamic range can be captured. At ISO 200 or 400 the footage is perfectly usable. At 800 the noise starts to be visible. This is shot at ISO 1600, which is the highest ISO that I would use on my G85 in video, and here the noise is clearly visible in the shadows. After light color grading it stays roughly at the same level. These are quite extreme conditions because it is really bright outside and the room is dark, so it was not possible to capture details in the window on the right. So here are probably the limits of this picture profile, and in a frame with a lot of shadows ISO 1600 is probably the last usable value. So to sum up, this custom flat picture profile is good for all-round use. It captures a lot of dynamic range and gives you a lot of flexibility to tweak your footage in post. It is not as flat as log profiles, so it is also suitable for situations with lower contrast, and it is usable up to ISO 1600, which is determined by capabilities of Panasonic G85. Above ISO 1600 noise becomes more visible. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.